Welcome back. In this video, we are going to take care of our buildings being clickable. So as you see here, we have our building Q prefab, then the M prefab and the N prefab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new game object here, an empty game object. And I'm going to call this one unlockable buildings. So in here, I want to put all of the buildings as well as the elements that I can click on, because I don't want to be able to click on the buildings themselves. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button that will be just inside of the building or underneath the building, so to speak. And once I click on this button, it will then click or trigger an event that will allow me to, for example, first of all, activate the building and then make it make some money and upgrade the building later on because, well, we want to make more money with the building and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and take care of that. Therefore, I'm going to position this unlockable building close to my buildings here. So here a value that will be close to the spot of my buildings N prefab. So -23 in my case. So you have to find the right spot here for you. 24, and what else do we have here? 0 and -56. So here's 0, and now let's see where this is. So this seems to be legit somewhere around here, close by, because I just want to make sure that the unlockable buildings are going to be all nearby this spot. And I mean like this game object. It just makes it a little easier for me later on. So now let's create new unlockable buildings in here. So empty game objects. I'm going to call this one building 1. Then I'm going to create another one, building 2, and finally a third one, building 3. So now the thing is that we want to achieve a situation where we can activate those buildings, because by default they will be deactivated. We have a button in here which will be done via using a canvas, and then we also can upgrade the buildings later on. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that these elements are positioned accordingly. So for example, building 1 should be over here. Let's say where the other building N is. So let me activate this building. So I'm going to say building 1 is going to be roughly at the center of this building. Then let's activate the other two buildings also. So I'm going to say that building 2 should be here. That's good. And then building 3, let's activate that, which is this building Q prefab here. And building 3 should be roughly at this building here. Okay. Now what we can do is we can assign those buildings. So I'm going to assign the Q to be building 3 and M building 2. That's going to be good. For now, I'm going to deactivate building 2 and building 3. It will make it a little easier for me to take care of the UI of building 1. So we're going to focus on that first. So what I need is going to be a canvas, and I'm going to put that canvas inside of my building 1. So here, let me create a new UI canvas, and I'm going to call this one building canvas. Now this building canvas should be using not the screen space but the world space. If you want to use the render mode world space, you need to make sure that you add a camera, and I'm going to use the main camera here. Okay, so now I can use a spot inside of the world in comparison to my camera, and this will allow me to, for example, now drag a button in there or position a button in there that will be visible just inside of, for example, or underneath this building. So now about this canvas, currently it's way too big because currently it is, well, it's huge. So I want the canvas to be roughly the size of my building here. Therefore, I need to change its size up a little bit, and I'm going to use values such as here. Well, first of all, let's use -2.5. and here 2.5. So these values will vary for you. So something, well, in my case actually 0 is good here. They will highly vary depending on where you positioned all of your other elements, so where you positioned your city and all of that kind of stuff. So currently we can see that it is roughly here, so it will be slightly on top of the ground. We're going to see how this is going to look like once we add a button to it. So I'm going to change the size a little bit, so the size will be significantly smaller. You can see now we see the canvas even though it's with the wrong angle. So I'm going to have to rotate it on the X coordinate, so you can see now this looks a little better. So now you see this is here, and then let me see how this is going to look like. So for now it's in the air. We can potentially change it a little bit, but now let's first of all add a button. So inside of this building canvas, I'm going to add a new button like so, and let me call this one by button. And you see this button is way too big. Okay, so it's going all over the space here. And but well, let me also rotate this building canvas by 90 in terms of the Z coordinate. Actually, minus 90 seems to be better. Then the button will have the right direction. This way I don't have to rotate the button, but I just rotated the canvas. All right, so now let's change the size of the button to also be something like 10 times 10. Okay, so now this is our button here. You see it's significantly smaller than it was before. And I'm going to change the image type here because currently it's sliced. I'm going to set that to simple, and now it looks a little better. And now let's go over to the text of the button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale the text down to 10% in all directions. And the text should say something like by 0. So let me deactivate the building prefab so that we can actually see the button. Okay, there we are. We still cannot see the button text. So let me change that as well. What I'm going to use here is I'm going to use overflow in both directions. Now we can actually see the text. I'm going to use a font size of 20. So if we look at it from our game view, this is currently how it's going to look like. So maybe we should change the size of the button still a little bit, or what we could also do is, it's not so easy to hit the button here. Let me make sure that the city is closed. Okay, so what I can also do is I can rotate the button a little bit. So here, for example, on the X coordinate, so I could make it more visible for the user like so, or I can really just put it on the ground as it was, so it will be at 0. But then I need to make sure that it's actually going to be just on the ground here. So here, the building canvas, let me move it down all the way to where it's almost not visible anymore. So in my case, position 0 is too little. 0 to 1 seems to be fine. Let's put it up there. Well, in my case, actually, this looks a little better. So that's really something that you have to modify on your specific needs. So here we have by 0 now. Maybe we should even shrink it down in terms of its height. So maybe something like 8 would be better, but then the button actually like so. So this looks more like it. So let's look at it from the game point of view. That seems to be fine. We can also, of course, play around with the camera a little bit. So maybe move a bit back, something like this, so that the camera looks at this button like so. So now you could decide to, of course, also to get rid of the electricity poles here if you don't like them, if you feel like they are obstructing your view. But that would be our first button. Now we need to do the same thing for the second button and for the third button. Now let's actually make this button clickable, or let's click on it to test if it's clickable, and you see it responds. So that works. The button is in our game. It is in the world view and not in our UI view. So even if we were to move around on the map, the button will always stay here. Now, I would recommend that you just try to achieve the same thing for your other buildings, such as building 2 and building 3. So you will need to add another canvas and another button inside of this canvas, and you need to make sure that it obstructs roughly the size of the house. So we could make our button a little wider still, so we have options there. But yeah, try to achieve this roughly, where you have buttons just underneath your buildings. In the next video, we're going to take care of the money manager, which will allow us to, well, manage our money. So see you there.